Greenwashing is all too common these days. Bad actors like fossil fuel corporations use greenwashing to try and trick the public into believing that they are actually allies in the environmental movement. Spoilers, they're not. Keep watching to learn more and equip yourself with some tools to spot greenwashing. Let's start with a basic definition. Greenwashing is the act of making false or misleading statements about the environmental benefits of a product, service, or a practice. When a company or organization spends more time and money on marketing themselves as being sustainable than on actually minimizing their environmental impact, that's greenwashing.
All right, team, so people have been complaining about how our products are creating lots of greenhouse gases and dumping toxic waste into poor communities and literally murdering puppies. But you know what? I think it's time we did something about it. So, any ideas?
We could revamp our production to use less waste and transition to regenerative agriculture.
Or we could hire a PR firm to rebrand all of our products with like trees and shit. And we can throw in words like sustainable, natural. Genius. My boy.
Yeah, buddy. Separating truth from fiction can be difficult, but here are some tips to help you spot possible greenwashing. 1. Vague language or green buzzwords. Simply advertising something as green, sustainable, or eco-friendly without specific details or more information. There are a lot of terms that get thrown out there. All natural, sustainable, environmentally friendly, similar to other industries promoting clean or cruelty-free products. There is no government or consumer body that actually certify these words as having an actual meaning. Also, remember that green, cruelty-free, etc. doesn't indicate anything about human rights. If a company utilizes recycled materials but uses low-wage labor, that shouldn't count as sustainable. 2. Random images of nature. Filling advertisements and branding with images of trees, the earth, rivers, even though those things have nothing to do with their actual business. 3. Hiding information. Staying silent about their manufacturing practices, supply chains, etc. If a company uses baseless terms like in number 1, but isn't open about their actual business practices or carbon footprint, it's highly likely that they don't have any real evidence to back up those claims. 4. Emphasizing carbon offsetting. I'm going to come back to this one, but promoting carbon offsetting while doing nothing to reduce your own facilities or supply chain emissions is not actually sustainable. 5. Using the term recyclable too loosely. It's more common than you think for a corporation or business to say that their products or packaging are recyclable or biodegradable, when they're actually not. Or when recycling them requires a special process that just isn't available to the average consumer. 6. There's someone else pulling the strings. It's always good to ask yourself, are any company board members also the CEO of an oil company? Is this small business owned by a larger company with unsustainable practices? Many companies may tote eco-friendly practices while simultaneously lobbying against emission regulation or really any kind of climate action. And this kind of reminds me of a video of climate protesters from Climate Defiance who crashed a fundraiser for Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey, who takes money from big oil.
And fossil fuels! Longer than fossil fuels! And fossil fuels! Touch you! And fossil fuels! Fossil fuels! You hurt your car!
That guy, one of the attendees of the fundraiser, turns out to be a fossil fuel lobbyist. Thanks, Internet, for sleuthing that one out. So why are they like this? Money. The answer is always money. A report from McKinsey Institute found that Gen Z are more likely to spend money on companies and brands that seem to be ethical. Another, Nielsen's Global Corporate Sustainability Report, found that 66% of consumers would spend more on a product if it comes from a sustainable brand. And that jumps to 73% among millennials. Here are some common greenwashing claims to look out for.
Natural gas is good for the environment.
Burning gas may produce less CO2 than burning coal or oil, but it's still carbon intensive and not a long-term viable energy source, unlike renewable energy. Here are some examples of this out in the wild. This one is actually an ad from American Petroleum Institute.
We can rely on carbon capture technology.
Today, global carbon capture and storage capacity accounts for about 0.1% of global fossil fuel emissions, and the technology just cannot capture 100% of emissions. For an example of using this claim to mislead consumers, let's take a look at notorious climate criminal Chevron. In 2021, Chevron claimed that using carbon capture and storage projects are expected to reduce emissions by nearly 5 million tons per year. Sounds great, right? But what if we put this into perspective? In 2019, Chevron disclosed its annual emissions at 697 million tons of CO2, which is over 130 times larger than its plans for capturing CO2. Here are some more examples.
Carbon offsetting is the answer to fossil fuels. We're carbon neutral.
Here we are. I told you we'd come back to this one. Often used in tandem with carbon capture excuses, carbon removals and offsetting schemes like this can be a part of tackling climate change. But they are not an alternative to prioritizing cutting emissions for any sector, let alone the fossil fuel industry. And I want to zoom in on this claim carbon neutral, which could be its own video. Speaking of which, I highly recommend John Oliver's piece on carbon offsets. He does a really good job of breaking down the details and provides a lot of case studies on why this term is often bogus. But TLDR, the claim of carbon neutral basically means that a business has offset or plans to offset its emissions by investing in projects that reduce environmental harm in other ways, often through planting trees. But the true benefit of carbon offset projects can be difficult to measure. To become carbon neutral, companies employ plans that, even if scalable, can often involve creating massive monoculture tree plantations, which can actually cause negative impacts on biodiversity and nearby communities. Some companies even manage to claim the carbon credits from existing forests. The argument here is that these corporate offset schemes are the only way to stop deforestation. Again, ignoring their own industry's contributions to deforestation to begin with. Here are some examples of not-so-friendly climate organizations utilizing this claim. Finally, here's a big hint. If you ever see any of these companies claiming anything they do is green, don't trust them. Check out the description of this video for my sources. And I'm actually gonna say it, like and subscribe. I have plans for my next few videos, so hopefully I'll see you here again. Thanks for watching.